Hello and welcome to Lifestyle with Alina Muradyan. Today we continue talking about real estate. We'll talk more about the complex part of real estate, commercial lending. I'm happy to introduce to you my guest, commercial lending specialist, Sarkis Daldumyan. Hello, Sarkis.
Hello, Alina. Thank you for having me here.
Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
I'm very happy to have you here because many times during our show we talk about real estate, buying homes, we showcase different type of residential homes, and I think commercial lending takes such a big part of our everyday life that it's very important to dive into it and give them a little bit more details about different type of lending, commercial lending programs, and most importantly, introduce you to our audience.
Oh, absolutely. When it comes to commercial lending, there's different aspects to it. It's not just one direction, just like residential, when it's just either purchase or refinance.
Very straightforward.
Yeah, very straightforward. Commercial has different dynamics to it. There's business aspect to it. There's a investment aspect to it. There's a multifamily. There's government-based lending. There's many different aspects to it. So it's diverse.
I would like to talk to you a little more about how you found yourself in commercial lending, or maybe just lending altogether. I think our audience would love to know that, a little bit about you, your background, how you ended up here.
Sure. This is going to be an interesting story. As a young kid, when I was 13 years old, as any 13-year-old that I think that was normal back then, aspired to be something greater than what they were. Okay. Now we have all these technologies and so on, but back then what I wanted to be most was an astronaut. And not just any astronaut, I wanted to be the first person to go to Mars, to walk on Mars, and being an Armenian myself, to be the first Armenian in space and on Mars.
Interesting choice.
Yeah, it was a fascinating choice. I went, that's what I wanted to do. That was my theme. That was my life goal. I studied about it, read about it a lot. So one summer day when I was 13, my uncle, who was into finances and lending, came over and asked me that simple question as you did. And with the same enthusiasm, I responded back to him with the same way. I want to be an astronaut, I want to do this. He giggled and said, tomorrow you're coming to work with me. And since then, I've been in finance. I started off doing residential financing. Then a couple of years later, I wanted to do a little bit more and understand the industry a little bit more. I did a little bit of real estate, which
the sales part of it.
Sales part of it, which was not my calling right away. Right afterwards, I was introduced to a gentleman who kind of guided me into commercial lending. And that was around 2006, 2007. And we all know...
good and also at the same time a bad time to get into real estate, because everything went downhill after that.
Yeah. It started off great, and everything all of a sudden changed. So sticking to it, seeing the worst portions of it, and continuing commercial lending, advising, and so on, has been a great ethic and work challenge for me as well, but have stuck through it and still continue to do so. Anything that you're passionate about, that you wake up so early in the morning to work on, or while you're asleep and all of a sudden this idea comes up in your head and you wake up and start jotting down information, and in this case, in commercial lending, jotting down financing numbers in the middle of the night, trying to make a structure or a deal structure properly. That tells you a lot about the type of individual and the type of passion you have. Because of that, I love complex situations. And I think this comes from trying to be an astronaut, trying to fit into that complex network. Taking something that is not ordinary and trying to fit it into something that becomes extraordinary. As boring as it may seem, looking out the window here, buildings that with sky rises and so on, you look at those and you try to understand, how can we finance something so complex as that, where you have multiple tenants, where you have multiple moving parts, where you have multiple investors, where you have multiple guarantors? How do we fit all of that into a box where a lender or a bank says, this makes sense, here's my money? That's what I love about it, the complexity of it.
Great, and I'm sure you love it so much that you have your own company. You founded the Oak Ridge Capital Advisors, and I wish you all the best. And I'm sure that many years to come, we'll have another show, maybe talk about the new programs that come up.
Absolutely.
Before we start talking about the programs, for people that are not as familiar with the difference between commercial lending and residential lending, let's talk a little bit about that part of it.
Sure. So think of residential as being 1 to 4 units. Anything between 1 to 4 units, including condos. So you have your house, you have a duplex, triplex, fourplex, and then your condos. Those are all residential. Now, everything else becomes commercial. Now, with a few exceptions here and there in regards to financing, but everything else is the commercial aspect of it. That has nothing to do with personal. It's more business now.
So basically, anybody is that looking into purchasing an apartment or a property with more than 4 units, which is 5 units and more, that's already considered commercial lending, including all the businesses and the commercial buildings and all the buildings that we see around us.
Exactly, If you look out the window, everything out here is commercial. Where the people come from to work in these buildings, those are residential.
Let's talk a little more about apartment buildings and what type of programs are available. And before we go into that, I would like to add that anybody that doesn't even own a property should hear about this, because this is the same thing as investing in a business. Because I know a lot of younger people, younger generation, they don't like to buy a home yet because they like to travel, they like to have that freedom and not just be in one location. Investing in an apartment is an amazing way to start thinking about your future.
Absolutely, Anywhere, when it comes to commercial, when it's 5 units and more, you got to be a little bit more savvy investor, a little bit more, as they say, skin in the game, because it does cost a lot of money. Especially in Southern California, you're in real estate, so you know the market much more better than most of us do. You know that housing market is continuing to climb up within Southern California, especially within the commercial realm. So if you're looking for anything that is 5 units and more, depending on the location that you're looking into, it may or may not make sense for you financially. Now, the reason... For example, if you're looking at, for namesake, you're looking at an apartment complex, a 5-unit, 6-unit apartment complex in Beverly Hills. Prestige location, high value real estate out there. The value of the property that's being sold might not contribute to the income that is producing, and so it might not cover its own debt. So that's the first thing we have to look at. When you're looking into purchasing any type of multifamily, make sure you look at the operating statement.
Operating statement.
Write that down. And the rent rolls.
And the rent rolls. And that's basically how much rent
they're collecting, and the operating statement pretty much tells you how much debt it's covering, or how much expenses it has. So whatever expenses it has, minus that, and you have your net profit. And if you look at the historical of it, you can kind of make sense as far as, I don't want to go into too much detail as far as cap rates and so on. But in general, you want to make sure that the income being produced from that property does cover the debt of the property that you're trying to purchase. Now, that also helps us with determining how much down payment you would need, which is a big factor. I was just going to ask that, because most of the people, end of the day, they just care about, okay, I leave that to the professionals. How much do I need to put down? Right.
So that was my next question.
Yeah, if you think of it that way, then you shouldn't be investing in anything. Just because you say, okay, I have $100,000, this is as much as down payment I can put, what can I buy? Well, do your homework first. This is an investment. It's a long-term investment. Many things can go wrong with it. Many things can go right with it, but you always want to do your due diligence. You always want to look into it. You always want to contact a local professional, such as yourself, who knows the markets very well. And then you also want to make sure that a lender or a brokerage firm is on your side trying to figure out what is the best financing option for you.
The reason I'm smiling right now, because I see a lot of people going to search for properties, including multifamily properties, without having any type of pre-approval.
Right.
And something that I would love for you to tell the audience, since you are the lending professional, how important it is to be pre-approved versus just pre-qualified.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in any case, especially if you're looking into finding multifamily properties, it's always a best method to provide those two documents that I mentioned. Those are the simplest ones. Any real estate agent, they already have it when they're listing the property. Rent roll, operating statement, provide it to your lender, provide it to your broker, and so on, and have them do the mathematical calculations and tell you if this property does cash flow, if it does cash flow, how much dollar value does it cash flow, and how much do you need to bring in to cover the rest. So that way you know how much down payment you need to come in with, and what it is that, or how long will it take for you to regenerate your money back.
I still want to ask this question,
Sure.
even though you somewhat answered it, but what's the programs that you work with now, and from the examples, from the cases that you've closed, from the files that you've closed, what's the least amount of down payment you've seen so far, percentage-wise?
Well, veering off the multifamily properties, because those vary depending on the location and so on, and many other factors. There are government guaranteed programs. I'm sure most of your viewers know this as well. SBA programs that guarantee a portion of the loan for a bank, and a bank has to be a participant of an SBA program in order to provide those types of financing. That type of financing, you can go in as little as 10% down payment.
And we can talk a little more about it down the road,
Sure.
when we talk about the SBA loans and the business purchases and the buildings, the owner-occupied buildings
Right.
for the business
Right.
owners. Continuing the topic of financing, I wanted to know, and I'm sure since our show is being viewed all over the state and maybe even out of state, I wanted to know, are you able to help clients, borrowers that are outside of Los Angeles?
Sure. The good thing about working with a brokerage and some lenders as well is that we can go outside of California. Even though we like our home state, yes, we can finance properties out in Texas, we can finance properties out in Nevada, we can go outside of those states. So if we have a borrower who lives here but wants to purchase a multifamily out there, sure, we can help them, and vice versa.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so they don't necessarily have to, so let's say if somebody in Texas wants to purchase an apartment building in Los Angeles, you're also able to help them.
Absolutely, absolutely. They don't even have to live in the United States. That's another good part
Let's
as
talk
well.
a little bit about international investors, since
Sure.
we come across so many nowadays, people outside of United States that are interested in investing in United States.
Absolutely, yeah. We see a lot of influx in a lot of international buyers, especially out from my personal experience, Australia and some from Europe. So they do love the properties out here. They do love the commodities out here, especially commercial real estate, especially multifamily properties, where it generates income for them and transfers funds back out and forth and so on. So yes, we do work with a lot of international buyers. It's foreign lending programs. It's a little bit different than what it is that we have for domestic buyers. But yes, definitely we do work with them.
A lot of things are paperless nowadays, so they don't even need to come into your office. Everything could be done through emails and phone calls.
Absolutely. Phone calls, Skype, which is phenomenal.
That's great. That's a great news. Let's talk a little bit about the SBA loans.
Sure.
I am more than confident there are a lot of business owners that are interested in purchasing their building, and I know that it's very complex as well, the small SBA loans. If you could tell us, educate us a little bit about just overall what the SBA loans are for those that are not completely familiar with it, and what are some of the maybe popular programs or just some of the programs that are available today.
Right. So there are several types of SBA financings. And SBA financing, what it really means is it's a government guaranteed loan. So a lender, for them to provide that type of financing, they need to be certified and they need to be approved with the SBA division, which is a Small Business Administration division. Now, what that does, if, for example, I like to always give examples, makes people more visual and understanding. So let's say you have a warehouse that now all of a sudden is for sale and now you want to purchase it. Your business operates out of there, so you're 100% occupant of that business. We can absolutely help you out with the financing of that with as little as 10% down payment, which is phenomenal. Which
That's a great program.
Yeah, it saves a lot of money for you know, as a business owner. That's the main thing you need to have is a lot of capital. So putting less down payment into a structure gives you more capital to continue business. Now, in saying that, the SBA aspect of it also provides working capital. So if you want to increase working capital, we can definitely help you out as well. If you want to do equipment purchasing, for example, if you're a doctor and want to purchase equipment and so on, absolutely we can help you out as well. You don't necessarily have to be a doctor for equipment financing. You can, you know, have a manufacturing firm and so on.
So basically, it helps you finance a building. So you could own the building that you operate off of. It will also help you function as a business loan, in a sense, to increase your business function, or if you need to invest in supply or equipment.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing loan. And are there certain type of industries that are that this loan is more popular for?
Well, anybody.
Or it really doesn't matter?
It really doesn't matter. I mean, it's more, this loan is for mainly businesses. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a warehouse. You can have a restaurant, you can have a medical building, you can be a doctor, you can be an attorney. It's basically more for business ventures. So you can purchase a building as an attorney, house 50% of the building can be your law firm, the other 50% rented out. As long as you're 51% and more owner occupied in there, definitely we can help you out with the SBA financing.
And I think it's very important to mention to our viewers once again that, you know, it's important that the SBA loan, for the SBA loan, that you're at least 51% occupying the building. Your business is occupying the building. And most importantly, just a reminder that each loan is very unique and you need to be pre-approved financially.
Absolutely.
So, because I know some people listening to it, if they're not familiar with it, with that type of a loan, they might call you and say, well, I fully occupy my the building and I want to buy it. You know, they still need to be approved financially.
Right. Again, with commercial lending and as far as any lending out there, it's case by case. So you can't say if it worked for one individual, it's going to work for the multiple of them, all of them. Again, it's case by case, depending on your financial situation, depending on your goals in life, depending on your business goals, it's completely different. So I would strongly advise people when they're looking into purchasing or looking into doing any type of financing to always sit down, be very truthful, be very honest, and consult with a professional and see what they can do.
Speaking of consulting, before they get ready to call you, what information would a borrower need to provide you with? So before they pick up the call and the phone and call you and say, Sarkis, I'm interested in purchasing my own building for my business, what are some of the questions you're going to ask them so that when they call, they are prepared to answer certain questions with which you could help them even better? Right.
Basic questions. Some of the questions they answer right away when we go into it. When I ask them, so tell me a little bit about what you do. That answers almost all of the questions. I need to know a little bit about the business. I need to know a little bit about what their goals are, what the property is, what it's selling for, what it's renting for, all of the financials of it. And I can get a small idea of what we're looking at. And based on that, if it makes sense, sure, we can go on to the next step. Because again, any government-backed loan or government-guaranteed loan is not a back in the day. It's not a stated loan or a simplified loan. They verify everything. So we need 3 years of personal taxes, 3 years of business taxes, P&Ls, you know, almost everything. Almost everything.
So it's important to have all those documents once you're ready to proceed with it. And speaking of the business programs, are there any specific programs that I should say is very hot right now that you would recommend for the borrower to take advantage of? Not necessarily SBA loans.
Right. Given that we did come off a very tough recession back from the end of '06, beginning of '07 until a few years ago, credit and income has been an issue with almost all borrowers.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, and I mean, almost everybody suffered. Almost all property types suffered out there. So we do have lenders, institutional lenders, and these are not private money individuals or hard money as most of people know, that we can finance anybody that may have a bankruptcy, that may have a lien, a tax lien, not so great in credit or taxes. So we do have institutional lenders that will help out with the financing because they understand the situation that people are in. So they don't want to just say, sorry, we can't help you, and walk away.
That's actually a very good point that you brought up, because I know I do speak to a lot of borrowers as well, a lot of people that are interested in purchasing, whether it's residential or commercial. And first thing they worry about, they think that just because they had bankruptcy, they cannot buy a property for at least 7 years. And if you could tell them one more time that it's not true, that
No.
lenders are more flexible nowadays, right?
Lenders are a little bit more flexible nowadays. Again, specific lenders, there's more well-known lenders that may veer off because they have a large volume to choose from. But if you are in that situation, if you have a bankruptcy as recent as a year ago or 2 years ago, again, it's case by case, depending on what your situation is, what you want to accomplish, what the property or the collateral is. We can definitely take a look at it, and if there's something that we can do to help you out with financing, absolutely, we would be happy to help you out.
Wonderful. Sarkis, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with our audience.
My pleasure.
I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to help many more people by sharing and by, in a way, motivating and inspiring them. Are there any professional tips that you would like to share with today's viewer?
Sure. I mean, if you're in the market for purchasing any properties within the next year or so, one of the main tips that I can give, and this goes for almost all realms, residential and commercial, pay your taxes. Everything's based off of income right now, and taxes are what we use to verify your income and your eligibility. Another thing that this may be surprising and maybe not in our industry, but when you're in the process of financing, especially when it's a large purchase, such as an investment property or even your residential property, please, please, please do not go out there, lease a vehicle, purchase another vehicle, or put a large expense on a credit card, because that does affect your qualification process. And regardless if you've been already pre-qualified or not, lenders will take that application back and re-review it and decline it right away. So please do not purchase that Mercedes. Leave it alone. Purchase it after the transaction is completed.
As tempting as it is.
As tempting as it is.
To go with your new home or your new business. Thank you so much. And those that are familiar with our talk show, with my talk show, they know I always handpick my guests. I try to invite people that I'm inspired by. I try to invite people that are doing something right, and most importantly, whatever it is that they're doing it with passion.
Absolutely.
And there's this new generation of entrepreneurs, people that are passionate about being in business for themselves.
Right.
What would you share with them? And I know you've been in business for yourself for a while now, and being self-employed, being an entrepreneur, it comes with its challenging times.
Absolutely.
And if you could share something that you think would be really valuable for somebody that's just doing their baby steps in this world.
Absolutely. You're an entrepreneur right in the beginning when you don't get along with your boss or you don't get along with somebody telling you what to do 24/7, or when to go to lunch or when to come back from lunch. it's quite difficult for entrepreneurs to take that direction from them. But entrepreneurs are great listeners. They're great individuals to take examples from others and steps and proceed forward with their lives. My best advice would be to any entrepreneur is always stick to what you're doing. Never give up. Even if it gets tougher and harder and harder and harder, which it will never get easier. Never get easier. Never give up. Back in 06, I can talk and attest for myself when I had multiple clients and all of a sudden market crashed, clients went away, the banks that I used to work with, they completely disappeared. I still stuck through it. Still kept going, still made my phone calls, even though some of the lenders that didn't exist at the time, after making those calls, figured out they don't exist. I still continued my passion. I love what I do. And always remember that what you love to do, what wakes you up in the middle of the night with sweats, what wakes you up in the morning, early in the morning, that gets you out of bed, that drives you, that motivates you, that always makes you think of what you can do to better yourself, that's what you got to stick to. Always do what you got to stick to and just stick to it all the way through. And you'll be great at it regardless.
I completely agree with you. And what are some, besides the obvious rewards that an entrepreneur has, besides the fact that it becomes a lifestyle, and to mention that it's not a 9 to 5, which it has
right.
its challenges, but it's also its rewarding parts also. What are some rewards that you've personally experienced in your life?
Well, being an entrepreneur gives you freedom. It doesn't bind you to a 9 to 5 job. It gives you the opportunity to go out and explore and talk to people and interact with people. And I believe nowadays that's more important to do than to sit back behind a screen and type. And I love hands-on. I love meeting people. I love shaking hands, and that's what I enjoy doing. And becoming an entrepreneur leads you to having more time, spending time with your family, spending time with your friends, and just overall buys you that freedom of time.
Thank you very much. Thank you once again for being at our show. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I would like to leave today's viewer with just an advice, just something that I would like to share. Whatever it is that you're passionate about, whether it's to be self-employed, whether it's to work for a specific profession that you've always dreamed about, just go for it. And just like Sarkis says, never give up.
Okay. Ready?
Ready.
Okay. Second mistake. Nice quiet on set, please. Take 2.